The care and growth model is based on an understanding that the performance of people is deeply affected by whether they work because they have to or because they want to. And it is further asserted that the key variable that accounts for this difference has to do with leadership. People go the extra mile for people, for a leader, rather than for an organization. Now, when people are asked to describe the kind of boss that they would work for because they wanted to, they may say many things. However, all of the things that they would raise can be reduced to two core categories. The first category would have a soft or a kind ring to it. People would say things like a boss who they would work for because they wanted to would listen, would be supportive, would be compassionate, would be approachable, and would have a sincere interest in them as a person. The best word that would encapsulate that soft and kind theme is the word care. What people are suggesting is that the boss has a sincere interest in them, is not just in the relationship to get something out of them, they actually care for them sincerely. The second category of things that would describe the boss that people work for because they wanted to has a harder feel about it. People would say things like they would like to work for a boss who is honest with them, who is fair, who gives them feedback, who mentors or coaches them and allows them to get on with the job. Now, if it is pointed out that a quality like honesty, for example, means that the boss may say things that are unpleasant to hear, they would respond that that honesty allows them to know where they stand and they can therefore learn and grow. This also suggests that when people work for a boss because they want to, it is because the boss does two things for them. The boss cares for them sincerely and gives them an opportunity to grow. Now, what is noteworthy about these care and growth criteria is that they've been found to be completely universal. They're true for every human being on the planet. The reason for the consistency and the universality of the criteria can be established by considering what you're actually asking when you ask people to describe the boss that they would work for because they wanted to. If you worked for somebody because you wanted to and that person asked you to do something, you'd probably do it. That suggests that you give that person the right to ask you to do things or to exercise power over you. This suggests that these care and growth criteria are the universal criteria for legitimate power. And when seen from this point of view, the universality makes sense. The first person that anybody would have a relationship of power with is with their parents. And insofar it is a first relationship, it is a principal relationship. We can glean the principles of the matter by examining the first manifestation of the matter. The first manifestation of power is parenting. And in this relationship, there are two people. There's a big one, the one with the authority, and there's a little one, the one who is, if you like, subordinate to that hierarchical authority. The job of the big one for the little one is very specific. It is care and growth. That's what parents do for children. This suggests that in any relationship of power will be seen to be legitimate if the aim of that relationship is care and growth, because that is what power should be doing for people. It is often assumed that the care and growth model implies, however, that leaders have a fundamentally soft and accommodating approach to their people. This assumption leads to four common misconceptions. The first misconception is that companies care. Now, care is an attribute of consciousness, and consciousness is only to be found in individual human beings. There is no such thing as a collective which is conscious, because the collective is an abstraction. Companies don't care. It is individual leaders who care. And if the individual leaders aren't the ones who care, then care cannot be said to exist in the company. The second misconception that leaders who care is that leaders who care take responsibility for the employees' physical and material needs. Now, while there is an obvious requirement for leaders to be fair and in the process of being fair to ensure that people who work for them are adequately rewarded for the contributions that they make, this does not mean to say that the leader takes on a parenting role to the point of disabling the people who work for them. Each adult is fundamentally accountable for addressing their own material needs and for the material needs of their dependents. The third misconception is that care should be made the preserve of care specialists, such as an employee welfare function in particular or the human resources function in general. It is very important to remember that when people work for a boss because they want to, it is big as the boss cares, not some specialist functionary. The primary research that led to the establishment of the Care and Growth model was conducted at the South African Chamber of Mines Research Organization in the 80s. And then it was established that the use of a stand-in or a proxy function to deal with, if you like, the human problem had the effect of undermining the legitimacy of the leadership. Such an approach was called surrogate management and was demonstrated to have an adverse effect on trust in management. The fourth misconception that one needs to dispel when considering the issue of care is that the boss who cares is by definition a friend. For the boss to care does not suggest that the boss behaves like a friend any more than a parent who cares is a mate of the child. The problem with viewing the boss as a friend creates the condition where it is assumed that for the boss to be able to effect a care role, the boss and the subordinate necessarily have to have an egalitarian relationship, and this is simply not true. It is quite possible to care for somebody when you have a hierarchical relationship with them. To confuse care with an egalitarian relationship stands the danger of actually undermining the authority of the hierarchy. A leader who cares will do a number of things. The first thing that they'll do is that a leader who cares will keep promises they make. This leader will not make undertakings just for the sake of mollifying a subordinate and will not make promises that they are not able to honor. The second thing such a leader would do is that they would be sympathetic to the personal concerns of people reporting to them. If a leader is approached by a person with a personal concern, they would be able to suspend their own agenda and give whatever time is required in order to listen to and consider the issue of the person is struggling with. The third thing a leader who cares is that a leader who cares will involve or consult team members on matters that affect them. I mean, it stands to reason that if you are not going to treat people purely as resources, you will consider their needs and requirements. Fourthly, a caring leader would listen openly to the views and concerns of members of their team and would govern the degree to which their own prejudices influence their perceptions of issues that are being raised. The fifth element, is that a caring leader would assist a team member with work-related problems. This leader will not focus purely on results. This leader would therefore not have an attitude that would suggest to the team members that how the team gets a result is really their problem and that the only thing the leader is interested in is the result. The sixth element of a caring leader is that they would respond to issues raised or questions asked. The leader would not just attempt to fly under the radar and hope that uncomfortable questions will be forgotten or go away. They'll be careful to ensure that they give feedback on any issues that have been raised. The seventh thing a caring leader will do is that they will keep members of their team informed with regard to the performance of the enterprise. The financial performance of an organization will not just be seen to be the preserve of senior management. In the attempt to develop autonomous and mature working people, there'll be a deliberate focus on keeping people appraised of the financial performance of the business. The eighth thing a caring leader will do is take disciplinary action when it's required. To care does not mean to say that one has no interest in the maintenance of standards and that one is incapable of holding people to account. Care will mean that if a team member had the means and the ability to do what was required of them and they did not do what was required of them, then that person will be held accountable. The ninth attribute of a leader who cares is that that in enterprises where the wearing of personal protective equipment is required, a caring leader will ensure that people have access to that equipment, but would also insist that people adhere to standards of wearing such equipment. Similarly, in enterprises where there are hazards associated with the work, a leader who cares will ensure that people who do the work are given adequate training to be able to execute the tasks that are required of them safely. And the 11th element of a leader who cares is that they will tell people as it is. Care does not mean to say that a leader will try to whitewash unpleasant information. In treating team members as adults, this leader will make sure that they are kept fully appraised of things that they need to know, even if it is unpleasant for them to hear. Now, there are a number of things that a leader who cares may or may not do. A leader who cares may or may not socialize with team members off work. You know, the old British Army horror of fraternizing with the troops is not an appropriate attitude for a leader who cares. It is entirely appropriate for leaders who care to spend non-work related time socializing with the people who report to them. Secondly, a leader who cares may give a person reporting to them an increase should that person demand such. It is possible that in a perfectly legitimate relationship between a leader and a team member, that the reward that the team member is given is out of touch with their value in the market. Should the team member bring this to the leader's attention, it would not undermine the leader's stature if they should address the problem. In other words, they may or they may not pay people more if it's asked for. A third thing that a leader may or may not do is to allow people who report to them to leave work early. I mean, in the context of care and growth, people are not treated as resources to achieve a result, but are understood to be people who do have human concerns. It would therefore be entirely appropriate for a leader who cares to allow a subordinate to leave work if there's a legitimate issue that has to be dealt with. The fourth thing a leader who cares may or may not do is that they may improve the benefits of people reporting to them, and in so doing, this does not suggest that they've become soft or incapable of maintaining standards. The fifth thing a leader who cares may or may not do is that they may attempt to improve the workplace facilities where they are not up to required standard or can be made more comfortable for the people who work there. The sixth and final thing that a leader who cares may or may not do is that they may or may not do a favor for a subordinate if this was asked for. It is important to bear in mind that this favor, however, is entirely at the discretion of the leader, and it does not suggest that the leader does not care if they consider that doing the favor is somehow inappropriate. Now, what leaders who care will definitely not do. A leader who cares will not send a team member who has a problem to HR to have that problem addressed. The leader will try their best to address the issue themselves, knowing full well that in sending the person to HR, they would be undermining their own ability to provide legitimate leadership for the people who work for them. The second thing such a leader would not do is that they would not allow people to take shortcuts or to do fundamentally immoral things in order to achieve a result. This is true for issues relating to safety, environment, and governance. Now, a leader who cares will know the following things. The first thing they will know is they'll know something about the family of a person reporting to them. And that would include matters such as, what's the person's marital status, the ages of their children, where the person lives, whether or not they have to commute to work, and so on. The second thing a leader who cares will know is that they'll have a very good idea of the values of each person in the team. They will know what makes a team member tick, what their aspirations are, and what they're trying to achieve with their lives. Further to this, the third thing that a leader who cares will know is that they'll have an insight into the health status of the person reporting to them. They would have some idea as to whether the person exercises or not, whether the person has any chronic ailments that they're struggling with, and whether the person has any habits such as smoking or drinking that may or may not affect their health. Fourthly, a leader who cares will also have a good understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of a person reporting to them. These strengths will not just be strengths that are concerned with the technical execution of the tasks that are assigned to them, but also broader, if you like, personality strengths that the person might bring to the party. The fifth thing that a leader who cares will know is that they'll have some insight into the passions and hobbies of the people reporting to them. They'll get some idea of the kinds of things that the people like to spend time on in their free time. The sixth thing that such a leader would know is that they would care, they'd have a very clear understanding of their team members' expectations, both of the leader and of the organization. The leader will also consider how team members' day-to-day working life can contribute to realizing those expectations. And finally, the seventh thing that a leader who cares will know is that they'll get an understanding of the background of the people reporting to them, of where they grew up, of their work history, of their educational background, of their religious convictions, and of their cultural contexts. So to summarize, the naming of the care and growth model can be misinterpreted to suggest that leaders should be soft and weak. This is not the case. The soft element of care requires a real fortitude of character because it requires an unconditional commitment by the leader to act in the best interest of the person in their charge. This commitment to acting in the best interest of the person includes being willing to be tough with that person in their own interest, even if it means putting that person's good opinion of the leader at risk.